We're ready. We're ready to go. Live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube at correct 8:03. Still 2 minutes late, but not that late, right? But not that late. Let's begin. Come on in. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen. Take your best seats. You're all looking really pretty. And if you can hear me, let me know so that we can begin the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. We deserve it. Right? It's that good. So let's begin. Folks on YouTube, folks on LinkedIn, if you can hear me, say something. If you can hear me, guys, give me a shout and then we'll begin. I am ready on LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere. I'm here. I guess I'm audible. I am audible. Take your best seats. You're all looking really pretty. Yeah, I am audible on LinkedIn, and I guess I'm audible on. Yeah, I am audible on LinkedIn, and I guess I'm audible on YouTube as well. And that's good for me, right? So, got it. Perfect. I'm audible on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And now we're gonna begin. Bum 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 bum. Hello everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for our parents, our kids, ourselves, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we've got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition. The beautiful, sacred, sweet tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together. It's supposed to bring good luck. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having lemon tea. And here we go. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Absolutely wonderful. Sublime. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you're not alone. It says that we're in this together. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin with some research that somebody did, some prominent university in US, and they said that loneliness affects physical and mental health. People who are lonely tend to develop physical and mental ailments. Now that sounds logical. That doesn't sound like a surprise. That's not a revelation. But what if there's a inverse correlation in that research? What if people who have physical and mental ailments, they are lonely because not many people would want to connect with them, right? That makes sense. A lot of the research that we come out with, we have a causation correlation problem, and sometimes there's inverse correlation problem, right? So let's say if somebody says that, hey, you're lonely, that's why you're not fit, and then the person says, maybe I'm not fit, that's why I'm lonely. And that's why we do this actually. The whole live stream thing, it's a very, very good thing for the whole loneliness problem. Because not only are we just really working, we are doing this mental workout, stretching our mental muscles, but we are also developing friendships, right? So a lot of people who interact with Thinkers Frequency, they have started connecting with each other, right? I get messages saying that this has got to be a regular thing, I'm joining, and then other people start connecting, right? And in the morning we get this analysis out of the way, we do a lot of thinking, we do a lot of reading. That's why I started doing this. Thanks to Scott Adams sir, who inspired me to do this. And so that's a very good thing, right? Moving on. SEBI step may prove taxing for Jane Street. Well, this is no news. People who've been watching Thinkers Frequency, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know the Jane Street scandal on how they could make like $4 billion scamming retail investors by their weird scammy practices. And in just 2 years, they made $4 billion in just 2 years. So SEBI has obviously given them a notice. They've barred them from the markets. They've also seized $500 million worth capital, and so on and so forth. And Jane Street has said in a statement that they regret that SEBI doesn't seem to have understanding of standard hedging practices. And those guys said, no, we do understand standard hedging practices, but it's just that you are scammers, right? So viewers of Thinkers Frequency have already gotten a detailed boost on this, so I won't begin again. I won't repeat myself. However, if somebody wants an explanation of the whole Jane Street scandal, I could help. Hi there, says Malice Alice. Hello, Malice. And good morning, says Mr. Shamir. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Shamir. So Jane Street goes. If you guys need a refresher on the Jane Street scandal, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move forward. Moving on. Shareholders of Z Block promoters bid to up stake. So Z has one of the most interesting corporate stories of all time in the Indian space. People who've watched Succession, people who've liked Succession. So Succession is a show about loosely based on the life of Murdoch's family. Murdoch is the Fox News group, right? The legendary. So Succession is a very, very prominent, very popular, very respected show based on Murdoch's. It's an HBO production, right? But however great Murdochs have it for their story, and it's great, it's awesome, we have Goenka's. India has Z's story, which is as interesting as the story of Murdoch's, So Z has been held by Goenka, Subhash Chandra Goenka, if you know. Now Goenkas have had a serious relationship with the government, right? They've been very pro right wing essentially, and as they grew, their business became weak, right? So they used to have a lot of influence, like Z and the TV channels of yesteryears, like NDTV on the left, Z on the right, India Today. They used to have a lot of influence. But ever since 2015, the TV industry has been falling off the cliff, right? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember the D2H play. D2H play has gone down by. So they used to have in 2015, they used to have like 151 million D2H subscribers in India. Now that number is at like 100 million or so. Okay. So it's already from 2015 to 2025, it's already fallen by like 33%. Fallen. Okay. Not growth rate declined, fallen. And then, it's supposed to, people are saying that by 2030, it will fall down to 78 million, 75 million, or 78 million. So in 15 years, the entire D2H industry will be half of what it was. So with the TV influence falling, Z News has obviously, borne a lot of brunt. And with that, the dynamics had changed. So the company and the empire, so to speak, had the option of, let's say, letting it go. So Z News had some acquisition offers, and the major turning point in the history of Z News was merger with Sony. So Z News was going to be merging with Sony, and together they would have created a $10 billion empire, right? And which would have had a better shot at fighting, let's say, OTT platforms and let's say everybody else. But the bone of contention in that particular deal was that Sony wanted Goenka's out. Sony said that the company will be run by professional management because Goenka's also had a lot of, cases against them. They had some fund diversion cases against them, some securities fraud cases against them, and so on and so forth. Things get very complicated at the top, right? So Sony wanted them out. That was the deal. But Goenka's took the deal, but started stalling it, in hopes that Sony would let go of that particular, clause. Let's say. Now, Sony is a Japanese play. Japanese are very, very particular about these things, right? Cliches are cliches for a reason. Japanese backed out at the end of the day. They said we are not going ahead with the deal, which led to a lot of disappointment for both Sony and Z. But yet again, what it proved was that Goenkas were there to stay. Now Goenkas had a very limited have a very limited stake in Z right now. They have like 3.99%, right? But they have a lot of voting rights. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to raise some money and up their stake by, like, let's say 18 to 19%, right? That's so from 3.99 they wanted to go to 18.4%. Now if they would have gotten an 18.4%, it would have been nice. They would have had a new winning shot. But seems that the shareholders have, let's say, blocked their attempt, this particular attempt. But Goenkas have been fighting, and they will fight. And I have a lot of respect for those guys now. Anyway, Mr. Ashim Garg says, there's 50 million people in India who have actively given up D2H for other content. Hard to believe 50 million people actively did that for OTT. Yeah, it is very hard to believe, Mr. Garg. It is very hard to believe. It is a pretty astounding story. Just imagine. And D2H is not because of just OTT. There's also Doordarshan. So there's free D2H which is being provided by the government. So, but that's just an excuse. Actually, that's the right way to read that. People have been giving up their TV subscriptions at the speed of light. So that's what you come to me for, right? Some crazy analysis which not many people know. So you know them before anybody else because we talk about it a lot, right? Tata Motors, Mahindra & Mahindra and 3 others to raise over 2,000 crore PLI claims. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that India has been very aggressively pushing for PLI. PLI is called Production Linked Incentives. India has been trying their best. The government has been trying their best to actually boost manufacturing of EVs, manufacturing of solar, manufacturing of semiconductors, smartphones. Smartphone manufacturing has basically, the bet on smartphone manufacturing, that turned out to be a home run for India. So one of those schemes is about EV, right? And EV, they had outlaid a 26,000 crore rupee PLI scheme, production linked incentives, that you make this much EV, we're going to give you some X amount of money per every EV you make with local components and so on and so forth. Right? 2,000 of that, 2,000 of those 26,000 crores have been claimed, are being claimed by Mahindra, Ola, and so on and so forth. You know what the scam happened with PLI? So government gave this EV PLI, right, to these Indian companies, and what happened then? What happened then? I just lost my train of thought because of a comment. Yeah, so Indian companies, Indian two wheelers, the Hero and Okinawa, Hero Electric and Okinawa, they were the leaders in two wheeler electric space just like 3 years ago, right? They had like 90% of shares just 5 years ago. So all those people, what they were doing was they were claiming these PLI benefits, but at the same time just procuring stuff from China. So they were not really making use of the PLI scheme as intended. They were not making parts locally. They were just assembling Chinese material and claiming the PLI incentive. So government has essentially blocked those guys. They asked them to return the money. They stopped their PLI schemes and so on and so forth. A lot of hoo-ha happened, and both of those companies are almost dead now. So Hero Electric is dead for all practical purposes, and so is Okinawa. They're almost gone from the entire scheme of things. How does that sound to you guys? So, not just that was the PLI story, but PLI is not just, the government is not just trying to boost, let's say, manufacturing, or let's say indigenous production through PLI. They're also trying ELI now. ELI is employee linked incentives, that you hire these many people and we'll give you this much money. So a lot of moves there. Mr. Tushar Tiwari says even old generation are on YouTube and OTT. Oh, 100%. 100%. Old generation is totally on YouTube and OTT all the time. So they've finally gotten the addiction bug. India, by the way, on an average, Indians spend like 6.5 hours on the smartphone every day. 6.5 hours on the smartphone every day. So all those hours that TV was taking earlier are being taken by, you know, smartphones. How does that sound to you guys? Is that mind blowing or what? So moving on, let's move forward. TCS has posted a 5.9 year-on-year rise in net profit, even as revenue declined 3.1%. What did I tell you? I feel like an African lady in hindsight. You know, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? And what happened? Exactly what I told you. And when did I say this gonna happen? Long time ago. I told you that IT is in severe stress and things are not gonna be looking good for IT, right? Even now, and it's just gonna keep getting worse in times to come, right? So TCS noted a 5.9% rise in net profit, but the revenue declined 3.1%. So revenue is already declining, right? It's not that not growing, it's declining. Now when that happens, you just, now it comes to efficiencies. How efficient can you be? Now how do efficiencies come? They come by firing people, they come by bringing new tools. When an industry starts falling, when growth is spoken of in past tense, it leads to very, very different conversations and moves by Indian IT. And I've been talking about this, and this has been on cards, but now the signs are getting clearer as we speak. So let's move forward. Yeah. Speaking of very interesting things, Viceroy, the short seller, they had basically shorted the Vedanta stock, right? Now, when they were shorting the Vedanta stock, Vedanta's debt, they had shorted, and while shorting it, they basically, gave everybody the view that Vedanta is a Ponzi scheme. They said that Vedanta's debt is a Ponzi scheme, and there's a lot of debt overhang, and the Vedanta resources, it's a parasite which is feeding on a dying host and so on and so forth. But just yesterday, I told you, we discussed that their shot was a damn squib. So these guys like Hindenburg tried to short Vedanta, but all of the things that they actually pointed out in their short report, it was just public disclosures, it was out. It's just, there was nothing new as far as these people were considered. So every bank and every, ratings people have said that it doesn't seem to be a problem and Vedanta is pretty safe. So that's interesting. So nothing there, right? Damn squib from Viceroy, the US based short selling firm. Moving on, India and US trade deals are happening at the speed of light, and this trade deal they want to end it before the August 1st deadline. And when that happens, you ought to be looking at uh, some real conflicts are getting addressed as far as this trade deal is considered, right? Do you know what those conflicts are? Do you realize the conflicts? The conflicts are in dairy, are the farm sector, and so on and so forth. Just 1 second, guys. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Hi guys, I'm back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was let's say some sounds that had to be dealt with. Anyway, Mr. Ashim Garg says from the outside it looks like there's a lot of administrative bloat in these giants, in these IT giants. Well, at that scale, it's hard to say, right? It's hard to say because just imagine like TCS is a 10-15 billion dollar company by revenues, right? $15 billion. So when you judge bloat at that point, it has to be a little judged a little differently because it's not bloat, it's called useful redundancies, you know because a company that big cannot be running without any fat. You understand what I'm saying? The perspective is that if they try to cut too much of fat, if they try to trim too much of fat, there's a risk of actually cutting muscle, and that is a big problem. So there might just be bloat, and now that the industry is falling with the IT, you will be looking at a lot of trimming of the fat. However, it's not that simple. That's what I'd say. Moving on. Hidden Chinese research vessel in the Bay of Bengal. So there's a French intelligence company, which is essentially, uh, basically French maritime intelligence found out that Chinese vessels have been hiding in near Indian waters, and they've not been there. They've been actively hiding themselves by turning off their, basically radar detection thing. So there's the technical term for it is turning off their AIS activity. AIS is essentially AIS signals. What is the AIS signal? 1 second. So AIS signal is basically the signal which these chips or these things are supposed to display legally to avoid any sort of suspicious activity, right? If there's a ship or if there's a plane, if they're under the radar, there's nothing to hide, right? However, these Chinese ships, essentially these Chinese vessels, had been hiding near Indian waters. Now that has been discovered by the French intelligence play, and they have been it has been shared with India. Now, what does this mean for the Indian defense players, especially the maritime players? What does this mean? What do you think it means for the Indian defense and maritime players? Let's say like Masdoc, like Garden Reach, like Cochin Shipyard, and so on and so forth. Well, I've been bullish on defense for a long time. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that I've been bullish on defense long term, and that has really worked in my favor because defense just this year has grown like 40% stock, the index. That's been pretty great. However, no matter what this news says, defense stocks fell yesterday. Do you know why? Do you know why? Mr. Tushar Tiwari says green flag, and Mr. Ashim Garg says makes sense. Okay, so you know why? Why do you think the defense stocks fell yesterday? I'm giving you a second. Take a second. Take a second. Profit booking. There was a lot of profit booking which happened yesterday because just imagine the defense index going, let's say, 45% up when the entire index is falling. What do you think? What do you think? A lot of people essentially booked really healthy profits from the defense sector and moved on. So some stocks fell, MDL, GRSE fell at 2%, 3%, 4%, and so on and so forth, which turned out to be bad for the people who held on, right? But I personally think, while analysts are saying that now whatever growth defense stocks have shown, whatever prospects they have, it's already been priced in the stocks. So defense stocks should not grow in the times to come. I feel that Indian government will essentially be looking at really bulking up their defense moves, and these people might not just be looking at it right now. So in the near term, we might see defense stocks getting a bit of a hammering because they've been up for so long. Might happen. However, in the mid and long term, when I say mid and long term, I mean 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. Indian government has no option but to really push the pedal to the metal as far as defense play is considered. And just now, just in the last 3 days, what did we discuss at Thinkers Frequency? We discussed that Mr. Modi went to Argentina, met Javier Milei. What was that conversation about? That conversation was about the drone play, right? It was the drone play. You remember that? Then he met the Prime Minister of Brazil, and what was it about? It was about the drone play, the defense play. Then he met Namibia, the president of Namibia, and that conversation was also about mining and minerals and defense. So there's a lot of activity happening as far as defense is considered, and India has not recognized Chinese role in the Operation Sindoor scenario because recognizing that officially would lead to a lot of cascading problems. However, it's clear that China, Bangladesh, and Pakistan are now a military alliance against the country. And India's 80 billion defense budget would not cut it. So India would really need to increase it in times to come, and that should reflect in the earnings, in the potential and the prospects of the defense industry. Mr. Ashim Garg says much of it came from the budget though. Which part are you talking about, Mr. Ashim Garg? What came from the budget? Anyway, moving on. Speaking of defense, Turkey's focus on Bangladesh, Pak aimed at targeting India. Pak army chief plans to visit Sri Lanka. So a lot of things happening as far as the defense place considered. And while analysts are saying that whatever good news defense had, it's already priced in, I think they should be surprised. But that's me against the analysts. Let's see what happens. Out with the old, in the cool with new AC. Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember we talked a lot about uh, the AC norms. The government is trying to essentially curb the energy overuse, or let's say energy consumption, by making ACs more efficient. Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember we discussed how government actually came up with a mandate that future ACs wouldn't have temperature less than 20 degree. You know why they came out with that norm, that temperatures, companies, the ACs won't have less than 20 degrees uh, as the lowest temperature that ACs offer? Because with every degree centigrade that the temperature goes down with an AC, there is a 6% rise in energy consumption. So the government has tried to limit the consumption by making ACs more efficient. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to think of a way where ACs older than 10 or 15 years, could be replaced with new highly efficient ACs like 5-star ACs. So what they want to do is they want to implement a scheme where they could incentivize replacement of those ACs, just like cars. So they want people to give their ACs, companies to give them some sort of incentives, or they want to incentivize companies to take old ACs and give them new. So another PLI kind of a thing, but for scrap old recycling of old ACs. How does that sound? How does that sound to you guys? I mean, the rise in defense stocks, Mr. Ashim Garg says, in reference to our previous conversation about, uh, defense industry. No, not really, Mr. Garg. It was not just the budget thing. India started exporting a lot of defense products, or defense equipment, or defense parts, if not the entire equipment, right? So it was not just defense, government, because you know what? The $80 billion budget. Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency know this because I talk a lot about this. But the $80 billion budget that India has, not a lot of it goes to new equipment. Not a lot of it goes to new equipment. Just guess how much of defense spend goes to new equipment, right? Just guess. $80 billion. How much of it goes to the new equipment play? Just $10 billion. So most of it is salary, most of it is maintenance, most of it is that. Then there's something called capital outlay, right? Which is not salary, maintenance, pensions. Salary, maintenance, pensions takes half of it. Then comes capital outlay. Now, capital outlay also requires, let's say, research, maintenance of existing equipment, and so on and so forth. Then comes new equipment. That is total $15 billion or something, right? Now, $15 billion is divided into two parts. One is foreign equipment procurement, and then $10 billion is indigenous equipment production, right? So just 10 billion of the 80 billion goes to the defense procurement, and that 10 billion spend is not enough to feed that kind of a beast, right? So I hope that cleared it. Moving on, Mr. Tushar Tiwari says pensions take much. You're right, Mr. Tiwari, you're right. Moving on, SATCOM services may come to you by the year end. So this has been an ongoing development. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that Starlink just got the nod. Airtel Bharti Eutelstat OneWeb, that got a nod in 2022. Jio got the nod in 2024. Then there's Amazon Kuiper, which will get their nod. And then there's, Vodafone is also tying up with somebody. And the people who've got the nod, like Starlink, Bharti, and Jio. Now, this is an interesting alliance because Bharti has Eutelstat, which is its own company. So they're going to distribute their own SATCOM service. Jio has their own service, which they're going to distribute. But they'll also be selling Starlink's unit. So Starlink's distribution will happen through these two guys. So they'll sell two products, one of their own, one Starlink. How interesting is that? And when they do that, they have basically let go of the edge that they might have had because they got the clearances early, right? They could have gotten the security clearances and began the market early. They could have had an early mover advantage if it exists, but all of those three will be beginning at the same time. So that's interesting. Speaking of Bharti Eutelstat, UK government has also invested like 163 million euros in Eutelstat. So Eutelstat, OneWeb, is a French company. It's the government French company. Okay. Now Bharti used to have a huge stake in it. They've paid their stake, but they've also invested like 160 million now with British government. So now it's a French government, British government, and Bharti trifecta play. Now the French government, Emmanuel Macron, the Prime Minister of France, also invited India to invest in, you know, in Eutelstat, but India hasn't moved forward. It seems like Mr. Sunil Bharti is representing India. 30. What did you say? What does 30 mean? Mr. Ashim Garg says 30. I don't understand that, but yeah. So moving on. Center working on plans to make ITI great. Indian telecom industries. Well, that's no. Love lost or not, they're off to find themselves. From breakup escapes to OTT inspired pop culture trips, travel companies are creating unique itineraries for Gen Z and millennials. So, Gen Z and millennials are traveling, and the average age of people taking these trips has gone down by like 10 years. So, earlier, if the average age of a travel customer was 35 years, now it's 25 years. I'm not saying that's the average age, but the decline is 10 years. And a lot of it is inspired by cinema, and a lot of it is inspired by social networking. People have been visiting some sort of obscure places, and this trend is rising. But the analysis is, how good is this news for the travel industry? Please do something about the latency, says Mr. Ashim Garg. I'm so sorry, Mr. Garg, but there's very little I can do about the latency. Uh, I don't control the tech, unfortunately. But YouTube has better latency, by the way. So YouTube is almost in real time, low latency. Moving on. So we were discussing how good is this for the Indian consumption story. Like young people going to, let's say, Chandratal or Spiti Valley and so on and so forth. How good is this for consumption story? Not good. Not good, because if your travel and tourism needs to make money, you've got to seriously let go of the backpackers. Because backpackers essentially are Chindi people. So they don't spend much, as a national policy, this, how I learned about this was Goa. So when Goa, Mr. Manohar Parikar, rest in peace, great person, when he was basically looking at the Goa tourism play, right? When he was the chief minister of Goa, he said that we don't want backpackers. We want to attract the family crowd because they spend a lot of money. Backpackers live in dormitories, like Chindis, and that doesn't really help the economy. So while this is a good step, of course, that people are going to obscure locations, it's not that good news for the economy, so to speak. By the way, I also went to Chandratal on a bike. I had a 8-day trip. From Delhi, I went to Chandratal, Lahore, Spiti, then back from Manali to Delhi. It was like a 1700 kilometer trip, 8 days. On the bike, I was, it was just one bike. So, no, we didn't have any like caravan or something. So it was a very adventurous trip. Anyway, moving on. Coca-Cola bottler Kandhari acquires Wave Beverages. So there's a lot of action happening as far as the bottling play of Coca-Cola is considered. You remember? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember. We talked about the whole Coca-Cola bottling plant. So Coca-Cola Beverages is getting acquired the bottling plant, the prime bottling plant of Coca-Cola beverages is getting acquired by Jubilant. Now, Jubilant is a huge player, of course. Domino's Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, guys. Jubilants also have life sciences. Now, Jubilant's Bevco, Jubilant's Food, they are acquiring Coca-Cola bottlers. And now, Kandhari is acquiring Wave Beverages. So, there's a lot of consolidation happening as far as bottling operations of Coca-Cola is considered. You know, Kandhari is going to be big. Jubilant is a big conglomerate, and so on and so forth. So, this action needs to it needs some special notice and some special eye that what's happening as far as the Coca-Cola bottling plants reorganization plays considered. Moving on, domestic EVs dent BMW sales in China. Well, well, well. If anybody is surprised, nobody should be surprised, right? Now, I've been talking, this is the 47th episode of Thinker's Frequency, but ever since almost the first episode, we've been talking about how the Chinese EV play is a real thorn up everybody's ass. So I've got a big comment from Miss Arushi Bhatia. She says, backpackers drive the purpose of community-driven feeling, which is also a problem considering you spoke about loneliness earlier. But I agree, they are chindi to some extent, one being myself. And one being myself. Miss Arushi. Yeah, of course, you're right. I'm not against backpacking. I'm just talking from a macroeconomic perspective, you know. When you talk about the macroeconomic perspective, it's good that people are traveling and people are traveling to obscure locations and they are getting inspired by cinema and so on and so forth, right? However, if travel gets fragmented from a family operation to a backpacking operation, that's just bad news for the economy. That's what I meant. So, Miss Bhatia, we're on the same page here. Moving on, domestic EVs. So we were talking about BMW getting crushed as far as the Chinese market is considered, as far as EV sales are considered. Well, no surprise there, right? We talked about it. We've talked about it in depth. BYD and now Xiaomi is making cars, and Xiaomi got a lot of cars, as the pre-orders. They just got so many pre-orders, it's almost unbelievable. And then the beauty is that China sold, let's say, how many cars did China sell in the last month? China sold 2 million cars last month. India sells like 4 million cars in a year. 40 lakh cars in a year India sells. They sold 2 million in a month. And there was a lot of rebates and subsidies which consumers got, like $2,800 or something. $2,800. How much is $2,800? 8 times 2.5 lakh rupees approximately, right? So they got 2.5 lakh rupees, and turns out that European companies and American companies and everybody lost. It's just Chinese companies which won, which I've been talking about since the beginning of Thinker's Frequency. Moving on, India's short-term external debt ratio has declined. So how many of you know about short-term debt ratio? Short-term external debt ratio. So the country has debt, right? Every country has debt. India has debt. Now India has debt, and every debt has a maturation date, right? That, let's say I took a debt and there's the payment date. Now the payment date is next month or next year, and so on and so forth, right? So that particular thing is called the short-term external debt ratio. That how much of your debt is to be paid in the short term, how much of it is just maturing right away. That determines a country's freedom to operate, the country's cash position. That we don't have a lot of debt to pay right now. It's just like a house. It's just like a person, that we've taken some debt, and how soon do we have to pay it, right? Now that particular ratio of India has been declining very slowly and steadily, and that's a very, very good thing for the economy. So in 2021, March 2021, the residual maturity, the short-term debt in terms of residual maturity was 44.6%, right? Now it's 41.2%. Just 4% decline, but that does a lot, right? That does a lot, don't you think? So that's good news for the economy. Moving on, speaking of good news, bad news, I'm not sure, I'm on the fence on this one. But CPSEs, four government entities, capex up by 25% in June. So government has been the driver of all capex in India. Now that particular capex determines what happens, right? Capex is capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is basically when you create an asset. Let's say when you create a road, you create a highway, you create some new railway thing, you create ports, you create airports, and so on and so forth. That's capex, right? Now Indian government has long been struggling in attracting private capex, right? So private capex has fell. Corporates, Indian corporates, what they've been doing is they've been just keeping the money safe. They're looking at their money and waiting and watching and thinking about when they'll be able to make that particular investment, when they should be able making that investment. Not many private players have been actively participating as far as Indian capex story is considered, right? Adani group is one of the great groups which have been really at it. Now India, to compensate for that, Indian government and its entities are essentially looking at 25% up in June as far as the capex spend is considered. Railways are the big ones. 1.67 lakh crore in April, June, up 15% from a year earlier. So railways, national highways, and so on and so forth. And just to give you a figure as far as private sector capex is considered, private sector capex is supposed to decline 4.9 lakh crore in this fiscal from 6.6 lakh crore in 2024 to 2025. So it was already low, and it's not picking up, which is not good news. So this is basically the thing that viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember is a big problem for India. It's a big problem for India. What do you do? What do you do? Right? If private players just sit and wait and watch, they won't start factories, let's say. And if they don't start factories, people don't get hired. People don't get hired, they can't spend. They can't spend, companies can't hire. Companies can't hire, and so on and so forth. So it's a big problem, and I hope it gets solved soon. That's the only thorn up India's story, So the biggest struggle that India's story is facing is this two-pronged trouble, right? Number one is private capex, and number two is domestic consumption. Domestic consumption is not that great, private capex is not that great. And these two things are going to lead to an upward spiral as far as the whole country is considered. So this is what matters. Everything depends on this. These two things, if they get sorted, India will just start growing like never before. You won't even understand how it's happened. Anyway, moving on. Dairy certificate rules face fresh heat from US at WTO. As I said, India and US are trying to negotiate. So India has some sort of norms as far as dairy, imports are considered, because Indian dairy really needs a lot of protection. The dairy farmers are not very rich guys; they are very mom and pop. And Amul and all of these players, they have an extraordinary network of cooperatives. However, you can't be looking at fighting, let's say, American dairy produce, right? That's all machinated and so on and so forth. So India has norms like you won't have antibiotics and so on and so forth. Now US says that these norms are unnecessary restrictions on trade. Do you agree with US? Do you agree with US assessment that these things are just unnecessary problems posed by India? Well, I don't think so. I think it's very necessary that India protects its dairy and farm producers from foreign exports, and India is at it. So that's good news. Energy storage companies must cut import dependence. Energy storage companies, says Mr. Piyush Goyal. What does he mean? What does he mean? Do you know what it means? When he says energy storage units, companies must cut import dependence from select countries. From select countries. Didn't name anybody, but do you know who's he referring to? Come on. Don't be shy. Yeah, you're right. You're right. China, right? The whole battery ecosystem lives on China, dies on China, and nobody should name China right now because things just could get escalated, and we wouldn't want to fight that dragon right now. However, Mr. Piyush Goyal is nudging the Indian industry, the India Incorporate, so to speak, to just decouple from China ASAP. Because you know what happened? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember we had two problems. One was the rare earth magnet thing, which stalled the entire EV manufacturing in India. They blocked the rare earth magnet supplies. Without those rare earth magnet, Indians couldn't make their cars and bikes and so on, electric ones. And they couldn't even make their speakers. So that turned out to be a big problem. And if that wasn't enough, they blocked their fertilizer supply. So now India is scrambling to get its fertilizer supplies from, let's say, West Asia, Russia, and so on and so forth, right? So everybody wants to decouple from China ASAP. But is that easy? Is that easy? No, it's not. Niti Aayog is proposing state spend 0.5% of GSDP, that's gross state's domestic product, GDP of the state, on tech councils. Well, tech council, I don't think that's a good idea. Committee of Babus is never a good idea. And providing money to a committee of Babus is never a good idea. So I don't agree with Niti Aayog. Moving on, Glenmark and AbbVie are inking a 700 million drug licensing deal. Apparently they've made something for myeloma, which is a rare blood cancer types. So if that is, if the drug is in early stage right now, and it's shown some promise as far as phase 1 clinical trials are considered, but remaining stages are to be judged. And if it's treating cancer, a rare blood type cancer, I wish them all the luck in the world. I wish them all the luck in the world and more. Speaking of luck, Canara Bank has erased the fraud tag from Anil Ambani, Mr. Anil Ambani. Arcom loan. So Reliance Communications loan that turned into an NPA, and a lot of banks had called that fraud. But then case happened. Lawyers of Anil Ambani, and they went to court, and then everybody said, and they said, you got to remove that tag. This is not a fraud case. This is just a standard NPA. What do you do? So Canara Bank has joined the banks which have taken away that fraud tag from Mr. Anil Ambani. That's good news. That's less regulatory overhang, less legal pressures for Mr. Ambani. It seems like Anil Ambani's group might just turn around now. It might just turn around. It's been through really rough times, but it might just be looking at something as far as coming back is considered, because Reliance Defense has had good days, and there are other units which have also started looking good. So all the debt overhang has to be written off, of course. So he might just come back as a mid-level empire, the Anil Ambani Reliance company. Now he got a really bad deal when Reliance split. He got a really, really bad deal by Mr. Mukesh Ambani. Mr. Mukesh Ambani took oil, petrochemicals, all the cash generating things. He got Arcom. Telco at that time, it was debt laden. It wasn't a money making play. And when he got it, Telco just got ruined. You remember the 2G scam, right? Now 2G scam took down Arcom with it, and he just got screwed basically. Moving on, premium bikes likely to account for 22% of the two-wheeler market by 2030. So premium two-wheelers are rising, and economy two-wheelers are falling. Now what does this mean for the stock market is considered? What do you think it means for Hero? Can you think of what it means for Hero? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency know about this already, but I'm asking the new people. Do you know? Do you know? So 150 plus cc bikes were 14%, now they're 19%. They're going to be at 22%. What does this mean for Hero? It means bad news for Hero, because Hero is stuck as an economy bike provider. It hasn't been able to premiumize itself, And because it's not been able to premiumize itself, it's now number 3 in the bike market, I guess. It was number 1. It's number 2 or number 3. Maybe number 2, but not number 1 anymore. So Hero is gonna go through very tough times if it can't sell premium bikes. And its collaboration with Harley Davidson also went south, right? Nothing happened there. So that sucked. So let's see what happens with Hero now. Good news for TVS though. I guess good news for Bajaj, good news for Royal Enfield, but not good news for Hero. Moving on. Capgemini's 3.3 billion WNS buy may revive IT plus BPO model. Experts say AI remakes biz. No. It's not gonna revive IT plus BPO model. It's gonna change the IT plus BPO model. That's what's gonna happen. So again, there's a lot of fugazi as far as these people are considered. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency, remember, Capgemini essentially bought WNS. WNS is a very, very pioneering premier BPO, right? So it's been bought by Capgemini, and it follows a trend of AI companies or tech companies trying to acquire IT services and allied services companies to bring AI adoption at a faster pace in this industry. Because let's say if you run a BPO, you're a BPO guy essentially. You're not an AI guy. So the way you are going to incorporate AI in your processes will be BPO first, AI second way, right? That's how you'd work. But if you are an AI company and you acquire a BPO, you are an AI first and BPO second player. So you're going to demolish the entire existing operations of BPO, and it's going to be AI first. And that's what's happening as far as a lot of this is considered. Masayoshi Son is looking at acquiring Indian IT companies to bring this AI adoption into the IT fray, right? It's very, very scary news. By the way, startups are also doing this. So InfoEdge Ventures has invested in companies, and a lot of other companies, investors have invested in companies which are basically implementing Gen AI customer support in industries. So Gen AI customer support. So they are essentially looking at replacing call centers. Now, what did I tell you about that, folks? Do you remember? Do you remember our conversation? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency, do you remember? I hope you do, because I told you. Now look at this. The highly regulated financial services industry is finding application of generative AI models in customer-facing operations, from onboarding to servicing basic query solutions. Now, InfoEdge has funded Gnani AI. Then there's Arya AI, Yellow AI, Hyperface, and so on and so forth. And they are saying that it's tough to scale a BPO, right? From 100 people to, let's say, 1,000 people. It's not easy to scale an BPO, but we can scale our BPO, an AI BPO. A cost of every call in a BPO is about 15 bucks. That's the industry standard, 15 rupees per every call. As far as BPO is considered, that could come down to 6 and 7 rupees. Now 6 and 7 rupees, that means you're taking the human out. Well, god damn it, right? Amazon to invest more in Anthropic, Zuckerberg to invest more in AI. They've got to fight. Moving on. I don't miss out anything. So what I try is that after this 1 hour with Thinkers Frequency, you are like, the length and breadth and depth of whatever is going on in the business, economics, and finance ecosystem, right? So I try to be thorough. Moving on. Dull loan growth, margin pressure, credit cost to keep banks in a bind. Again, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that we talked a lot about banks going to be in pressure in times to come. 46 days ago, I had said that RBI has reduced interest rates and banks are going to be lending cheap. Loans are going to increase, because lending rates come down, more loans happen. That's how the business works. However, the problem is that people are not keeping money in FDs anymore. People are not keeping money in banks anymore. They are investing that money in the stock market, because Indian stock market is huge, right? Growing. So banks don't have enough deposits. Ideally, when interest rates go down, deposit rates have to go down. But since people are not investing in FDs anyway, they can't reduce the deposit rates that much. So while interest rates goes down, deposit rates will stay here, which means that the net interest margin of banks will get reduced, which means that banks won't be able to make as much money in the coming quarters. Right? Now these people are saying just the same thing: dull loan growth, margin pressure, credit cost to keep banks in a bind. Well, I told you. I told you. Anyway, moving on. UPI making the fastest payment. With UPI, India is making the fastest payments in the world. That's great news. I remember P. Chidambaram. No respect to him, so no Mr. P. Chidambaram, just P. Chidambaram, talking in Parliament saying that these people want mobile banking for India. How will a poor retailer, sabji vendor take mobile banking? They don't have mobiles. They don't have technology. They don't have the know-how to take mobile payments. Banking transactions are slow. It's just impossible that these people will be able to take mobile payments. Then Jandhan happened. After Jandhan, UPI happened. And now I use mobile payments in all shops and patri stalls and whatever, sabji stalls, flower stalls, everywhere I use UPI. So P. Chidambaram, while having studied in Harvard and while coming from a royalty family, such a rich guy, being a union minister, these people didn't have the vision to actually grow the economy. And to not just grow the economy, to think about how they could grow the economy. And thank God that they've gone. Speaking of thanking God, we ought to relook at Mr. Raghuram Rajan's statements from the past. So he was vehemently against creating the semiconductor manufacturing play in India, right? So if you remember, Mr. Raghuram Rajan said that we shouldn't invest in semiconductor plants. We're getting $10 billion in semiconductor plants. We're not going to make good semiconductors anyway. We're going to make previous generations and so on. We should instead give this money to universities so that they can do R&D. And I was like, give this money to universities so they can do R&D? So that IITians and all of these engineering people could go to US for masters and get a job there? What kind of a retard are you? And that all proved to be wrong. And thank God that Indian, industry or the government in general decided to actually make those investments and run those industries, because smartphone manufacturing has proved to be a profitable trade for India. And so would the chip manufacturing be. And if we would have listened to Mr. Rajan, let's say Raghuram Rajan, no respect to him either, it would have been a real catastrophic blunder, right? Catastrophic blunder. And I believe that his comments should not just be looked at as intellectual differences, right? No, we think about this differently. No, they should be investigated. He should be investigated, because that's like, it reminds me from that scene as far as Godfather is considered. You remember that scene of Godfather? Whoever comes to you with the Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. Never forget that. I think he's a traitor. Well, strong words, but that's what I think. We can have an intellectual disagreement there. But I'm glad we didn't listen to those guys and we implemented UPI anyway. We implemented smartphone manufacturing. We implemented chip manufacturing, because all of these things are going to give people jobs. All these things are going to give people opportunities. It's not like you give the money to universities and then a person takes a degree from IIT, goes to US, studies there, makes money there. It won't happen. When a manufacturing plant is set up in India, people make money in India. So that's very good news. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I'm not missing anything. Actually, I am. So let me we're already late though, 9:07. Let me take 2 more minutes. So electricity rates in France hit negative. You know, they had so much of solar overcapacity and not enough storage battery capacity that electricity rates in Paris actually turned negative for once, which again talks about how important the battery technology is, linking to our earlier story of Mr. Piyush Goyal, right? And Grok is coming to Tesla from the next week. So the Grok, the AI chatbot, is going to come to Tesla. What should it do to Tesla stock, which has been falling off the cliff lately? Should it work? Should it not? Let's figure it out. TikTok has been the bone of contention as far as Mr. Trump and China is considered. Trump wants China to allow the sale of TikTok to American companies, but China is saying no. Now it seems like TikTok is facing a EU probe over data transfers to China. So TikTok is essentially the modern day, what do you call, the Helen of Troy. You know that story? The Helen of Troy story? TikTok is that. You let TikTok in and then it attacks the entire country and your country becomes a slave. That's it. There's a lot of things political, like Mr. Trump has asked that it's going to tariff Brazil 50% if they don't leave Bolsonaro alone. So Bolsonaro was the right-wing leader of Brazil. He was close to Trump and he was close to the whole right-wing fraternity. Now the current administration of Brazil is screwing Bolsonaro in the rear by lawsuits after lawsuits. Trump says, if you don't stop this lawfare, I'm going to give you 50% tariff. So is he trying to save Bolsonaro? Is he interfering in Brazilian politics? Well, clearly. But that is Trump. And now it's 9-9, which brings us to the end of the 47th episode of Thinker's Frequency. I hope you had fun. I hope you had a great mental workout, a great dose of insights and analysis, which doesn't lead to paralysis right before you punch in. It was lovely talking to you all, Miss Bhatia, Mr. Tiwari, Miss Malice Alice, Mr. Ashim Garg, Mr. Shamir KM, and everybody who joined. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Bye-bye.